Hello, and welcome to today's episode of The Pagan Parlor. Today is Friday, November 5th, 2021, and I am your host, Maximilian Pensword, but you can call me Max. Here, in this podcast, we will explore a variety of things related to paganism. At this point, I would like to give a notice and reminder that paganism is a broad term that envelops many different pantheons and belief systems, and as such, this podcast will be focused on paganism as a whole and not on any specific branch of it. Each episode contains a short lesson on a stone or metal, a story, myth, or legend, and a segment I like to call Keeping Up with the Christians, which you will hopefully find amusing as well as informative on what those pesky Christians are up to lately. Now, since we are all busy people, we'll jump straight in with a quick ritual. This ritual is intended to join the energies of the listeners in with the energies of the host, as well as the same in reverse, as well as some basic protections against the ill intentions of others. I will now light the candle, and as I do so, I invite all beings of good energy and good intent into the ritual space. Humans and gods and goddesses alike, spirits and the fae, come and join together in good nature and to play. Come old, come young, come scarred and burned, it matters not, there's a lesson to be learned. Come in good faith, and you will be safe, but come with ill intent, and your mind shall get bent. Bring us together in storms and good weather, keep us from pain, and from those who are sane. For the harm of none, and the good of many, we call to the gods, and they are many. Blessed are we, so mote it be. This week's lesson uses information that comes from wikinow.com, wikipedia.org, as well as direct quotation information from the Sorcerer's Guild on Facebook. This week, we are learning about Moldavite. Moldavite is a type of tektite, or glass made by meteor impact. Moldavite, in particular, is named for the river Moldau, and can only be found in southern Germany. This tektite can be forest green, olive green, or blue-greenish, as well as being either transparent or translucent. The meteor impact that created it occurred 15 million years ago, and this tektite glass rates between a 5.5 and a 7 on the hardness scale. Moldavite is used to boost the power of spells as well as generally enhancing divination. It can be used to purify energy or to let go of attachments. The stone is associated with air and fire, but does not have an astrological association as it is the product of a meteorite. Some notes from members of the Sorcerer's Guild on Facebook. Moldavite is a powerful tool and can really get things going, but be careful because it can also plunge your life into chaos if you're stagnating and in need of change. This little stone is a little more on the expensive side due to its finite quality, so cheaper stones are likely to be fakes. Additionally, as mentioned before, it is a type of glass. Don't be a dumbass and cut yourself with it, and don't leave it with your kids unattended. Next, we have our Pagan Promotion section. Herein, I will highlight one person of interest, celebrity, or pagan-owned business per week. This week's pagan is known as Sorcerer on Facebook and YouTube, and is the guildmaster of the Sorcerer's Guild on Facebook. Sorcerer is a pagan of the omnitheist variety and a practicing chaos magician. He is called in as a specialist for Season 9, Episode 5 of Hoarders, in order to help rid a woman's home of spirits that were causing mischief, and additionally he runs an active YouTube channel where he gives basic lessons on how to perform magic, as well as documenting his own magical experiments. This is an especially great accomplishment considering that he is a self-proclaimed Luddite and struggles with things related to technology. He is of Native American descent and was instructed in the ways of magic by his grandfather, and as such he has been practicing magic since he was a child. In addition to this, his hobbies include unorthodox yoga, playing the flute, and he enjoys fishing for sport, although he always releases his caught fish back into the wild after taking a picture with them. The next section is on stories, myths, and legends. In this portion of the podcast, I will retell a legend, myth, or story related to the gods, magic, or anything else that I feel to be paganism related. This week's story comes from the Norse tradition and can be found in its full version at storynori.com. This is a story about one of the more commonly known Norse gods from before he was known as the All-Seeing. How Odin lost his eye. Odin, like most of the Norse gods, resided in Asgard. Where else would a god live, after all, but the home of the gods? Odin was the god of war, battle, victory, death, magic, poetry, prophecy, and wisdom. Dude had a lot going on. Anyway, like most of the gods and most people, Odin didn't stay in his home all the time. And when he would sometimes leave it, he would sometimes come to Midgard, or what we know as Earth today. He would wander around in a long cloak, dark blue, with a silver clasp at the neck engraved with runes that contained magic spells. His cloak had a hood to keep off the rain, and he would carry around a stick that he used to beat back bushes and branches as he walked around. He was said to look quite old, with a long white beard reaching down past his knees. Of course, it's only when he took his own form. He was quite adept at disguising himself, and would often choose to appear quite differently from time to time. Anyhow, one day the All-Father was tired of wandering. He decided that instead of wandering around to find out what was going on in the worlds, it would be much easier if he could just see what was going on. As he pondered this, he considered that if he possessed true wisdom, he would be able to stay home and see everything at the same time. Now, Odin desired to gain the true wisdom, but he knew that in order to do so, he would need to drink from the well that was guarded by Mimir, the wisest man in Midgard. Nevertheless, the next day he set out with his favorite knapsack for Mimir's well. The journey was dangerous, over rocky mountains, being attacked on all sides with cold wind and snow as blizzards struck. He needed to travel almost to Jotunheim, where the frost giants lived, in order to find the well. It lay under an ancient ash tree, huge from its years of growth. In addition to this, Mimir was not known for his hospitality, or for giving things away for free. On the way there, as he went along the road to the well, he met with a giant riding on the back of a reindeer, and he immediately recognized him as the wisest of the giants, who knew many things, but despite his wisdom, he could not see through Odin's disguise, who had stretched himself to the height of a giant, and so they fell to talking. Odin said to the giant, "There is something I would really like to learn from you." The giant laughed, "Ho-ho!" and said happily, "Before you can learn from me, you must answer 3 riddles, and if you get any of them wrong, you lose your head. Answer them right, however, and you can ask me 3 questions on the same terms. Do you agree to my game?" Now, Odin didn't really care for this kind of game. Most people wouldn't, except for those that were extremely confident in themselves and desirous of seeing others come to harm. Despite this, Odin was on a mission, and so he agreed to the game that the giant suggested. "Okay then," said the giant. "Here are my questions. First, what is the name of the river that separates Jotunheim from Asgard? Second, what are the names of the horses that day and night drive across the sky? And third, on the day of Ragnarok, when the last battle will be fought, what is the name of the plain where the battles will take place?" Odin gave a sigh of relief, the tension draining from his shoulders. These were questions that he knew the answers to. He then spoke in return. "The name of the river is Eifling, and it is deadly cold, freezing any living thing that falls into it instantly. As for the horses that are driven across the sky by day and night, their names are Skinfax and Hrimfax. Finally, the Battle of Ragnarok will take place in the plains of Vigard. There we are destined to fight at the end of days."
"Humph," said the giant. "I guess you get to keep your head. A shame, really. I like to take people's heads and boil them for my dinner. I suppose it's your turn now."
Odin then asked him, "What will be the final words that Odin will whisper in the ear of Balder, his son?"
Immediately the giant exclaimed, "That's not fair! How could I possibly know that?"
Odin grinned a bit and replied, "You did not worry about being fair to me when it was your turn, and neither should I worry about being fair to you. Fortunately for you, I do not desire your head. Instead, simply tell me what I must offer Mimir to get a drink from the well."
"He will ask for the thing you hold most dear," the giant responded. "To this day, not one person has agreed to pay his price."
Odin nodded and walked across the stony ground of the mountains, and against the bitter cold and the wind and the rain, as he walked the path to Mimir's well. He fingered the clasp of his cloak after his cloak had become sodden with rain, and whispered the name of a rune inscribed there. Immediately his cloak dried, and the weather did as well. But he still had a long way to go, and the path was still slippery and treacherous. On the way, Odin thought of what he must give up in order to gain the wisdom to see everything, and of what he valued the most. After considering for a while, he considered that his oldest son Thor must be the thing that he held the most dear, and he consigned himself to make that great sacrifice for the sake of the world. After a very long time, Odin finally came around the bend and saw the enormous ash tree bordering on the land of Jotunheim, where the giants lived. It was beautiful and tall, with deep roots that drew wisdom from the reaches of the world, and near its base stood the well and Mimir.
"Hello, Odin. I have been waiting for you. Are you thirsty?" called out Mimir as he approached. Mimir had himself drunk from the well, and thus he knew all that would happen before it came to be, and everyone's name before it was told to him.
"Yes," replied Odin, "I have a thirst for wisdom, and I need to drink from your well."
Mimir laughed and replied, "Many come to drink from the well, but nobody ever wants to pay the price it costs."
Odin smiled sadly. "Yes, this too I know, the thing that I hold most dear and would not want to part with. You may have my son, my firstborn."
Mimir continued laughing at Odin, before saying, "The thing you prize the most is not your son, but instead your own eye. If you desire to drink from my well, I will have your right eye as payment."
Odin considered the price that he was given. Here on Midgard, gods would feel as mortals felt and suffer as they suffered, and so he would need to experience a great deal of fear and pain to give up his eye. At the same time, once given up like this, it could never be restored. "I will pay your price, Mimir," Odin said with determination, and immediately tore his right eye from his own head and passed it to Mimir, as the white fire of agony seared through his mind. Afterwards, Mimir handed him a horn filled to the brim with the waters of wisdom, and Odin drank deeply from that horn. Immediately his perception changed. He was able to see everything that had ever happened, everything that was happening, and everything that was going to happen in the future, all the good and the bad. When he saw all the troubles that would befall humanity, he was saddened, despite the joy of seeing how much happiness he himself would have. At this time, Odin became determined to do what he could to help the humans and prevent evil from ever getting the upper hand on Midgard permanently. This was the story of how Odin lost his right eye, but gained the true wisdom to see all, as well as the determination to show mercy upon us humans, who would be otherwise alone against the forces of evil. Now let's move on to the section which I like to call Keeping Up with the Christians. In this section, I take a look at what the Christians are doing lately and dissect it from a non-Christian's point of view. Part of this is a report on their goings-on, and part of it's just making fun of them, so I hope you enjoy. 1 month ago, on September 1st, 2021, legislative action was put into effect in Texas banning abortions after the heartbeat of the fetus can be detected by a doctor. This bill, TXSB 8, calls to attention that the state of Texas never repealed their laws criminalizing abortion, which predated the Roe v. Wade 1973 decision, which then made abortions constitutionally protected for all women across the country. It further goes on to define an unborn child as any human embryo in any stage from fertilization until birth. This means that for all intents and purposes, by the time a woman finds out she is pregnant, it is too late to get an abortion. In addition to that, instead of facing jail time or a properly leveled fine from the government, if you're caught having an abortion for any reason other than a medical emergency as determined by your doctor, after the heartbeat can be detected, instead of being fined by the government or jailed, private citizens will get to sue you in civil court and sue anyone who has anything to do with your abortion as well. They will sue you, they will sue your doctor who performed the abortion, they will sue anyone who has aided and abetted the abortion, even so much as just giving you money. That's from your boyfriend who paid you $600 to help cover the cost of the abortion, to the insurance company that decided that you actually did deserve to have an abortion. Oh, and the amount? Not to be less than $10,000. Not less than $10,000. I spoke with Matt, a self-proclaimed modern neo-quasi-Catholic, that states that abortion is not murder and women should have the rights to do what they want with their own bodies. He then goes on to say that if abortion is a sin because it is murder, then so too is masturbation, and on a much larger scale, and every Catholic man on earth is going to hell because of it. So if you do not believe that you're going to hell, then you do not believe that they're going to hell, and also FYI, condoms would also be murder. After his comments, I would also like to add that this is a wholly religious law in nature. The reason for that being, with how overpopulated the world is, 7.75 billion people and rising, with how widespread poverty and hunger are, and how many children grow up in foster care, or as wards of the state because nobody wants them or shows them any kindness, as well as with how many of the foster care children, over half by the age of 17, according to JLC.org, who experience an arrest or conviction. I mean, half the people in foster care get arrested or convicted of a crime by the time they're 17, and you think that forcing people to have kids they don't want is the issue? You're not doing these kids any favors by forcing them to be born. And honestly, if you believe that abortions are murder, I invite you to transform your home into an orphanage because they're going to need the space. Also, how many times do we have to have the debate? Leave women's bodies alone. Meanwhile, the Pope and the Vatican are focused on pushing their green propaganda after the COP26 summit. The Pope said that Biden is a good Catholic that should keep taking communion. He also expressed his appreciation for the 2 Jesuit institutions who have teamed up to host a conference regarding intercultural and interreligious dialogue and respect. I mean, honestly, do these guys never choke on how rich this shit is? The Catholics who have participated in how many holy wars and God-inspired cleansings are now talking about interreligious dialogue and respect? Give me a break. And as recently as November 4th, the Pope sent his encouragement to the Bishop Assembly in France during their difficult times. Now, it should be noted that their difficult times is referring to a sex abuse scandal, and he hopes that the bishops, along with the Holy Spirit, will find a way to console and honor the victims, take care of the wounded and scandalized, and then look toward the future with joy. Hello? Haven't the bishops already done enough to the victims? If I was one of the victims, the last place I would be going for salvation from sexual assault was back to the place that it happened. Also, how callous can you be to include the scandalized with the victims of sexual assault and then send to them to look to the future with joy? This is just all kinds of, oh no, we totally got busted, LOL. Just wait a couple of weeks and they'll forget all about it when they feel guilty about some sin or some other shit. Don't worry, they always feel guilt sooner or later. Well, that's it for Keeping Up with the Christians today. Next, as I have mentioned before, I would like to do a section for the audience questions where I spend a few minutes to address some questions that you all may have. Unfortunately, this is the second episode and I only have 4 listeners so far. Nobody's sent anything in yet. So if you would like to ask questions, leave comments or suggestions or content suggestions, or even just send me death threats because you're a butthurt Christian and can't stand to hear me talking smack about your religion, please feel free to send them to me at paganparlor1313@gmail.com. That's all I have for you today. Thank you for tuning in to this, the second episode of The Pagan Parlor. Again, any questions, comments, suggestions, or death threats can be sent to paganparlor1313@gmail.com. The whole of the law shall be do as thou wilt, but harm none. Blessed be, and don't forget to blow out your candles.